All right, should we get started, Allison?
Give it another few seconds. You might want to start. Well, give it go ahead now.
Okay, showtime.
Yeah.
Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're joining from. I'm Nadia Oseguera Ramon. I'm excited to be here hosting a call. I am looking forward to hearing what our presenter will share about today. But before we go into the main event, we do have a couple of icebreakers and announcements. So I'm going to hand it over to my co-host, Miguel.
Thanks, Nadia. Hi, everyone. My name is Miguel Rolas. I'm the Director of Community Animal Care with CARE. Good to see you all and excited to hear from Christina today for her presentation on supported people and supported animals. So we have the question of the day today related to that. So what is one piece of advice or insight a manager gave you that has stuck with you, and how has it shaped your approach to work? Do you have anything you want to share, Nadia?
Sure. I think for me, and it's actually my current manager, and I'm not just saying that because she's my current manager, Allison Cardona. Um, but something that she always points out is the value of lived experience, which I never, I have a degree, I have work experience, and I always place so much value on that and didn't see that I already possess a lot of other experience. I call it my street smarts or just things that I didn't learn in a professional setting. And she helped me see that I do actually bring that to the work that I do, and it's just as valuable as any other things that I have accumulated. Yeah, what about you, Miguel?
Yeah, and not to make it the Allison show, but Allison was also my supervisor at one point, and something that stuck with me is when I remember I made a mistake and she was like, "It's okay, as long as you're helping an animal, you're all right." And so just giving me a reminder of like the big picture constantly has really stuck with me to bring with me on the smaller tasks every day.
I wonder if there's anybody else that wants to put it in the chat. Um, oh, I see something here. Ooh. 99 times out of 100 times other people don't dislike you. It's in your head and you just have different forms of communication. Oh, I needed to hear that. Thank you, Jenna. All right, there's a lot of wisdom coming in the chat. I know we'll compile all of these and put them in the pet forum so that we can all take little nuggets of knowledge. Christina, I know you are going to have the whole floor today, but I'm wondering, is there anything that you want to share? Or is it coming up in the presentation?
It is. I'm touching upon it in the presentation. I think a lot of what I'm presenting today, I have learned from previous managers, so you'll see all that I have kept over time.
Cool, cool. I see the older you get, the less you care. That is so true. And I feel like, I don't know about everybody else, but for me, in like my early to mid 30s, the caring went out the window. So for those of you that haven't hit that age yet, it's coming. You will stop caring. Great. So please keep them coming. You can also put them in the pet forum later today. So with that, we're going to open the floor for national updates. We'll spend about 5 minutes here. So if you want to share anything, you can put it in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute, please feel free to do so. We ask that you keep your update to about a minute so that we can keep the program moving along. So any updates from anyone?
I'll jump in. I'm here on behalf of My Dog is My Home. Their upcoming virtual conference is coming up next week. March 25th, 27th. There's still time to register, even if you can't attend live. The recordings will be available. It is not to be missed. So many incredible human services and animal services presenters, including some folks on this call. And so if you care about keeping pets and people together, I just highly encourage you to attend. Thanks.
Thanks, Allison. Go ahead, Candace.
Hi, I'm Candace Hinkle. I'm with the Program for Pet Health Equity, and we just want to make sure that everyone knows that you are invited to join our One Health Forum that's in collaboration with Maddie's Fund. It's a place to bring together social services, animal welfare, healthcare, and public health to be able to talk together about One Health and how we can better help families by serving both the human and the non-human family members.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other updates? Give it a minute. Just looking out to see if anybody will unmute. Candace, there's a question for you in the chat. I don't know if you want to, okay. Charlotte jumped in. Okay, well, if anything comes to mind, you can always put your updates in the pet forum after this call. You can also drop them in the chat here during the conversation. We just, as always, we don't want to distract too much from the presenters. So, yeah, so just want to bring that forward. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to you, Miguel.
Thanks, and I'm just going to take 5 seconds really quick and go ahead and introduce the founder and principal of StellaFirma Strategies, Christina Lee.
Thank you. All right, let me share my screen. Can everybody see that? All right. So hello, everybody. I'm Christina, and I've worked in the nonprofit sector, specifically the animal well-being field, for over 10 years. And animal behavior is what brought me here. I've worked in adoptions, evaluating and rehabilitating dogs and cats from cruelty cases, so small scale and large scale cruelty cases. And I learned really quickly that, while animals are great to work with, as we all know, what truly energizes me is working with people. The interaction, building the relationships, getting to know each other, developing, uplifting others. And I did just that in leadership roles for the last 10 years of my career. So while working in this sector, I noticed a few patterns that I wanted to share here about staff development and maintenance. I'll share those trends and then share some suggestions on how to improve those issues. Turnover, especially for entry-level positions, was very high. There's ineffective management. People who didn't seem to know how to manage were in supervisory roles. There's a lack of training for individuals to become effective managers. And people almost seem like an afterthought. And this isn't anybody's fault. We're not pointing any fingers. This is just a reality of working in a corporation or organization in America, and especially in nonprofits. There's this idea that our staff is just a means to an end, right? We're here to find animals for all the animals, but to find homes for all the animals. But the truth is, without supporting our people, we cannot fully support those animals, which is why I am here today. I am a strong believer that building and maintaining a strong team will exponentially increase the quality of the work that your team is producing, which will positively impact the animals and the people you're serving in the community. So my presentation, Supported People equals Supported Animals, Developing and Maintaining a Strong Team. It gives a very broad overview and touches upon general staff development topics. Each slide could be its own presentation. I'm not covering nuances today that we experience as supervisors in our team and our work. I'm really here to plant seeds. There might be things that you see and like, I really want to learn more about that, or where can I go back and talk to my staff about that? So take note of those things. Maybe you can schedule a follow-up presentation, or you can contact me to chat. Today, I'll cover the overarching life cycle of our staff members, and I'll offer practical advice for each stage on how you can build, develop, and keep that great team. So we'll start with hiring, onboarding, most importantly, the day-to-day and maintenance, and we'll also touch upon saying farewell, so including termination and of course, leaving on good terms. And for the purposes of this presentation, when I say manager, I mean a role with direct reports. I know some people have manager in their title and don't manage people, they manage programs. So I just want to make sure for this presentation that's clear. And I hope that this content will be helpful for everybody in the audience, regardless of your position. If you're in a managerial role, great, soak it in, ask questions. If you're not a people manager, great. See what kind of process you want to be a part of as an employee and advocate for yourself. And maybe you can influence your organization to change their existing practices. And of course, you can ask questions as well. So first, let's start with the initial step, hiring. The most important and essential thing that you can change to build a strong team is to build equitable practices into your hiring process. We all have our biases. This is old hat to most of you. And we're more likely to hire people who have similar backgrounds as us, have the same perspectives as us. And yes, this still applies, the fact that we all have our biases and we should be fighting that 100%, but there are additional things that we can do to continue to get rid and fight those biases and diversify our teams. So let's look at each step of the general hiring process. And I encourage you to take a step back and look at your hiring process as well. In the application, your job description and the requirements, are there degrees in the JD that maybe are not necessary? For example, you're hiring for a role and you require a bachelor's degree on the JD. There's a candidate, an applicant, who does not have a bachelor's degree, but has 5 years of relevant experience. Would you then turn that candidate away because they don't have the bachelor's degree? I really think that's something that you would want to think about before you say no. So are there degrees in that JD that are not necessary? Really thinking about lived experience, just like what Nadia was mentioning before. Lived experience can be and is much more valuable than a certificate or a diploma that you get from a school, so keep that in mind. Hard versus soft skills. What can we teach? What's harder to teach? So hard skills are those that are easier to teach. So a computer program or how to put a harness on a dog. Soft skills are a little bit harder to teach. Clear communication, listening effectively. Those are things that people usually comes naturally to them or they've developed over quite a long period of time. So when you're looking at your JD, again, think about which of these are hard versus soft skills and which are really required for this role. And responsibilities. Are all the responsibilities in that JD really part of this role? I mean, I have seen JDs that are 3+ pages long. Wow, they're doing the job of 5 people. Is that really what you want to hire? It sounds like a unicorn. You'll have a really hard time finding someone to do the job of multiple people. So take a look at those responsibilities again. I've also seen some organizations removing identifiable information to make it easier for them to remove those biases. So in the application process, some people don't even ask for names or addresses or cities where you live or of schools that you went to, because depending on those things, you will definitely make judgments about that person. So if possible, I would encourage you to consider removing that kind of information that will immediately make you assume things about the candidate. So looking at your overall hiring process, there are a couple of things that you really want to keep in mind. Be consistent. You want to be sure that all your candidates are receiving the same information, and they're going through the same process. That way it's equitable and everyone's on the same playing field. How many steps are there in your hiring process? Why do you have 5 interview rounds? Are all of those 5 rounds really necessary? Is the candidate talking to really important people that they're going to be interacting with on a regular basis? How long do you anticipate this process to take? I have been through hiring processes they're usually a couple months long, but it's really nice to have that from the get-go to know, oh, like we anticipate that this will end by, and giving a timeline. Sorry. And you want to provide that timeline for the candidate. We expect candidates to be respectful of our time, right? So I think you must be respectful of their time as well. Tell them, oh, we're going to have the candidates moving on to the next stage. We'll let you know by next week. We plan to have the new hire on board by the end of April, whatever it is. All right, so you have gotten the candidates and you've narrowed it down to who you want to interview. Again, be consistent. Think about what information you are sharing. Think about the length of the interview. If you talk to one candidate for 30 minutes and another candidate for 2 hours, you're definitely going to get different information from those 2 lengths. So be consistent between candidates. The questions that you're asking. Again, try to be as consistent as possible. Ask the same questions to candidates A, B, and C. So you're giving them the opportunity to, again, be on the same playing field. The information that you're sharing about the organization, about the team. Now, of course, there will be times when candidate A might ask a question that candidate B didn't ask. I'm not saying that you can't answer those questions, but the information that you're voluntarily providing for them without being asked first, you definitely want to be consistent about that. And like I mentioned before, you want to provide a timeline. So in the interview, tell them when you expect to get back to them with next steps. Finally, a really important one in this process is looking for a culture add versus culture fit. So what do I mean by that? A lot of times we have a certain culture, a certain type of person that fits just like a cookie cutter really well into our team or our department or our organization. And we are sometimes scared to get someone who might not fit that cookie cutter the way that we expect them to. I challenge you to look for people who will add to that culture, people from different backgrounds, people who are bringing different perspectives, people in different walks of life. That will only benefit you and really encourage your team to think bigger. I'll give you an example. One of the teams that I managed was a behavior team, and we had 2 people who were from I guess traditional dog training background. So they both owned their own businesses and saw dog training clients. We had 2 people or 3 people who were from daily care. So they had worked up from the entry-level kennel positions. And then I had one person who was self-taught, as in she really wanted to get into behavior. So she had watched some webinars on her own, read books, and she was really motivated to learn. So because I had these team members that were from all over, yes, they brought their different experiences, their different perspectives. And because of that, they're learning from each other, and they're able to, as a team, think outside the box, think differently than the normal suggestions or normal things that a team might go through. And if this is sparking interest in you, on April 28th, on Community Conversations, we're going to have a panel discussion about hiring from the communities, specifically people who don't have specific shelter or animal welfare experience. So stay tuned for that. All right, congratulations. You found somebody to join your team, and now you have to onboard them. Be prepared. The onboarding process, well, similar to the hiring process, is really telling of your team and organizational culture. So you don't want to wing it. You want to be sure that what you are sharing with your new hire is consistent with what the other people on your team are already aware of. If you have 5 people of the same level, you want to make sure that they all have the same information. This is a great time to set really clear expectations for your new hire, not just for the role and what they're going to be seeing, but also what to expect during the onboarding process. So you want something listed out, a schedule, whatever it is, so that they know what to expect each day. And if there are any deliverables, things that you want them to hand in or talk to you about, or when the meetings will be. Remember that people learn differently. Adults have different learning modalities. So one person might learn best by reading, one person might learn best by watching a recording, one person might learn best by watching something live, and then someone else might be learning best from actually doing it with their own hands. So keep that in mind and take that into consideration as you're thinking of the materials that you're preparing for the onboarding process. And make sure you build in opportunities for questions. So be it to their peers or to you or whoever that they're training with, just make sure that they have lots of opportunities so that they can be heard and that they feel like it's a safe space that they can learn willingly. All right, I'm skipping ahead to saying farewell first because I do want to spend the bulk of my presentation on the day-to-day and management of the team. So we'll just touch upon this, which is the end of the life cycle. But whether it's on good terms or bad, people move on. And if you've done a good job, hopefully people are leaving on good terms. There's this famous quote by Sir Richard Branson: train people well enough so they can leave, treat them well enough so they don't want to. And I think it's such a good quote for anyone in a management or leadership role. And if they do decide to leave, don't take it personally. Maybe pat yourself on the back. You did a good job. I do think there are a couple of things that you want to keep in mind when saying goodbye to someone. If it was not on good terms, you want to make sure you have a consistent process, or whether it's good or bad. You want to make sure that how did you get here? Like, how did we get to this place where we are saying goodbye or letting go of this employee? Was there communication? Were there multiple attempts at clear communication channels throughout? So, of course, things might be a little bit different if someone is being let go for egregious behaviors. But generally, you want to make sure that you have a consistent process when it comes to the end of an employee's stay at your business. Get feedback. Why wouldn't you? I have talked to so many people in workplaces where they are really resistant to get feedback from people leaving. And the reason that I've heard is because, well, they're leaving, so it doesn't matter what they think. It's not true. They have worked under you, they have worked with your team. They can give you their true experiences and accurate experiences. So please gather that feedback. What went well, what didn't go well, and of course, take everything with a grain of salt, especially if it's a little bit a complicated situation, but get that feedback and really absorb it. And clarity on future steps. This is really important and can cause, I've seen it cause confusion in the past, in my experience. If your employees leaving on not great terms and they're not allowed on the campus of your work, whatever it is, let them know. Make sure they understand clearly you cannot do that. You can't reach out to ex-coworkers, whatever it is. Or if they're leaving on good terms and you really wouldn't mind having them back as a team member, tell them that. And then say, hey, if you see a application, email me, just like let them know that they're always welcome back. So be very clear what the future holds for them and this organization. All right, so now that we've talked about the bookends of the employee life cycle, let's talk about maintenance, the day-to-day. This is the meat of this presentation. If you do this well, hopefully you'll not have to do too much hiring or saying goodbye, and unless your team is growing, which could be a good thing as well. What are your responsibilities as a manager? Growth and development of your direct reports. Mentoring and coaching, you definitely want to be guiding and advising your team. Sponsoring your direct reports. What does that mean? Sponsoring means you are advocating for your direct reports, especially when they're not in the room. So saying their name when a potential project opportunity comes up, say, "Oh, I think that this person will be great for that," or "Wow, this person has been a really good resource for me during this project. I would recommend you talk to them." Really getting their name out there so that people know who they are and what they're doing. And of course, improving your department. Now, you might ask yourself, why? Why do I have to do these things? Well, you did sign up for it when you applied for your manager job, although I have definitely met managers who didn't apply, they just got voluntold to do it. But this list does not mean that you have to be best friends with your direct reports. If anything, I might discourage being friends, but that's another topic. And it doesn't mean you have to be all up in their business, being nosy and micromanaging. So what does this look like? I want you to think about your favorite manager. And it's similar kind of to the question that we had asked in the beginning, but I would love if people could put in the chat just a few characteristics, like 1, 2 words about your favorite manager and why they were your favorite manager. Oops. Sneak peek. Have to figure out how to look at chat. Here it is. All right. All right, so there's a bunch of stuff people are putting in. Authentic, open to new ideas, yes, supportive. What was on their mind, didn't play games. Compassionate, trusting. Training with patience, yes, communicated well, open to new ideas, open communication. Yes, yes, yes. These are all great. He listened and responded, understanding, flexible, kind, but let me work independently. Yeah, and I love that. Greeting you by name every day. I love that. And I can relate to many of these. So thank you for sharing that, everybody. Oops. No. Okay. Okay, so I had a great manager, similar to a lot of what you guys shared. I had a great manager who knew when to step in and knew when to step back. She provided lots of resources for me so that I could learn, and she set me up for success. And she also gave many opportunities for me to ask questions. Now, everybody has a different management style, and everybody has a different way they like to be managed, which leads me to my next point, which is know your people. This is so important. Everybody on your team has a different social style and different communication style. What do I mean by that? Social style is talking about how that person likes to interact with other people, how that person likes to be treated when in front of other people. For example, and then communication style, I'm talking about how that person likes to give and receive feedback, and those might not be the same methods. So, for example, you might have someone really extrovert on your team, likes to be seen in a crowd, likes to be heard. You want to encourage and praise that team member in the presence of others because that will really energize them. Let's say you have another member who's pretty quiet, they prefer to work on their own if possible and doesn't really like unnecessary attention brought to them. If you praise that person in front of a group of people, that person, it might be more of a punishment than a reinforcement. So keep that in mind. When you are looking for the different social styles and communication styles, there are a number of assessments that you can do. If you have an HR team, you can ask them to facilitate it. But I also saw some free online ones. Obviously, take one from a legitimate source. But I really encourage you to do that with your team. And based on these styles, you can also model your check-ins. Okay, so in your check-ins, you want to ask questions, especially those that tie into your direct report's growth and development. This can be personal goals, professional goals, whatever it is that you can learn about them and then push them and guide them in the right direction. Hearing of opportunities that they might not have heard of, but that align with their goals, that you can put them together. Give and receive feedback. what's going well, what's not going well, or things they wish that you did differently as a manager. Every check-in should be an opportunity for you to give and receive feedback from your direct report. Not the only opportunity, but one of the good ones. Set clear expectations for your employees, what you would like to cover in check-ins, how long they are, how often they are, and what I expect of you as a team member and a direct report. The frequency, again, is going to depend on someone's communication and social style. Some people need a lot of hand-holding, so they want to meet, or it's beneficial for them to meet once a week. Some people not so much, maybe once a month. I do recommend at least once a week, but that's something that you want to figure out that works best with your team member. I think having the regular frequency gives predictability, and it allows us to kind of get into a rhythm of like, okay, this is a safe space. I know what's coming. Some people get anxious to know or about meetings. So when it comes to knowing when it's going to be, it helps them prepare. And finally, no, not finally. Second to finally, have fun. Check-ins should not be a place where you're always, I don't know, not yelling, but putting down your direct report. It should be a mix of asking questions, asking them able to ask you questions, everything that I said before, but keep it lighthearted, keep it a fun place for your direct report to come to. And finally, do not skip or cancel your check-ins, please. Unless of course it's an emergency, and if there is, then please reschedule as soon as you can. I have had managers cancel or skip. Some have forgotten, some have canceled and never rescheduled until the next one, which is a month later. And then I don't have a check-in for 2 months. And it's made me feel like I don't matter, that I'm just so low on their priority list. So I think it's really important to remember that these check-ins can be very meaningful for your direct reports. So you want to treat them like any other important meeting on your calendar. Feedback, I've talked about it multiple times already, but there are 3 things that I like to keep in mind when giving feedback. Timely, specific, and sharing the impact. So what do I mean by that? Timely. Give feedback when it's appropriate. If we're in a removal situation, like a scene, a dog fighting place, and we're taking 150 dogs off site, it's probably not a good time. There's high stress, a lot going on. Maybe the next day in the office, I can provide feedback. If the direct report is handling an animal and the animal is in stress, that might be a good time for you to step in to manage what they're doing, offer suggestions, only if you're sure you can speak kindly and that you think that they can receive it well. Be specific. I know some of you mentioned this in the chat. Be clear about what the person did. Do not beat around the bush. You're wasting everybody's time. And it's not really helpful if you're kind of like going around and not really getting to the point. So for example, when you returned the cat to the kennel, you didn't check that the kennel doors were locked. Very specific, concise. And finally, impact. How did that person's behavior affect the work? This is probably the most important thing. No, all 3 are important. The third important thing that you can share with your direct report. And depending on their role, you might share team level effects, departmental, or organizational. So it depends. So let me share some examples with you. Now, this is a lot of text. Let's read through it together. So earlier today, when you put Fiona back into her kennel, you did not check that both her kennel doors were closed. Fiona ran out. Fiona's a cat. Fiona ran out of the kennel and hid under the cage banks. We spent 2 hours trying to get her, and 5 people had to come in from other areas to help. This kept those people away from their normal responsibilities for 2 hours, which could negatively affect the animals in their care, and the other cats in Fiona's room were stressed too. So this touches upon all 3 things that I just mentioned. Timely. So this happened earlier today. I probably waited until a couple hours after the incident. I don't want to do it during the incident, but I'm not waiting a week because then I'm not going to remember. Specific, not closing the kennel doors or locking the kennel doors. Very specific behavior. And finally, the impact. 2 hours, 5 people from other areas that were taken away from their responsibilities, and this negatively affected the other animals and the cats in the room. So you're showing them what their behavior resulted in. Let's do an example that's not animal handling. So at the team meeting yesterday, I noticed that you interrupted Mallory multiple times as she was speaking. Because you interrupted her, I could not hear her complete thoughts on the fundraising campaign. This drew out the meeting and made it more difficult for us to move forward with the project. So again, timely. It's yesterday. I didn't wait months or weeks. Specific, interrupting Mallory multiple times, and then the impact of their behavior. It drew out the meeting. It made it difficult for us to move forward with the project. It probably didn't let them get to items in the agenda. So again, timely, specific, and impact. So those are the 3 most important things that you can provide when giving feedback. All right. Team building. I know some people cringe at team building, but I think it's really important. You want your team to have a good dynamic with each other. We, especially in animal welfare, work in such stressful places. We can try our best to joke around and have fun, but it's not the same as spending time outside that environment and being able to be more relaxed and not waiting to hear your name on the intercom and see if you need to go run and help a dog or a cat. So I think it's important to be removed from that setting. I suggest at least once a quarter. Again, take into consideration your team's social styles. If everyone on your team is introverted and quiet and wants to be by themselves, karaoke might not be the best option, even if you love karaoke. Keep that in mind. Ask for input and ideas. Ask your team, hey, we're going to do this team building activity. What do you guys want to do? And keep in mind holidays and people's schedules. So holidays that maybe only 1 or 2 people on your team celebrate. And if someone on your team requested PTO like months in advance, don't make it that week. And the last 2 are related. I am a strong believer that they should be during work hours and that work should pay for it. Work must pay for it. This is increasing the efficacy of your workforce by helping them build bonds with each other and get to know each other. And this really helps your staff members be seen and feel seen by the organization, knowing that they're important and that the organization is willing to invest in them. So make the activity during work hours as best you can and have your work pay for it. Okay, so just a couple of examples that I've done with my team. The first one I did was archery and dinner. This was fun, but this is when I learned about the during work hours thing. This is my mistake. So this is after hours, and it was fun, but it definitely felt rushed because people were tired and they wanted to go home. Have a lunch. So if possible, get off-site. Maybe you have an outdoor area where you can have a picnic. Worst case scenario, do it in a meeting room or lunchroom or a conference room where it's just your team and everyone brings their food and talk about non-work stuff, or order a pizza, or order takeout, or go out to a restaurant for an hour and just have a simple meal together. Watch a webinar together and make sure you have snacks. So probably a more casual webinar, something you can pause often so that you can talk to each other and ask questions like, hey, what would it look like if we brought this to our team? Or, hey, we've tried that before. And finally, my favorite, maybe my direct report's not favorite, but I started like a presentation series within my team members so that they can do a little research on the topic and then present to each other at these meetings or these team building events, because it allows them to practice public speaking without being in front of strangers or people that they might be nervous around, but it's their team. So I thought it was successful, but again, have snacks. So as you can see, it's very important. Make sure all your team building activities involve food. This is a common theme in my team building activities. All right. And water yourself. What do I mean by that? Yes, hydrate. Hydrating is important. But keep learning. You have to continue to grow as a manager. Attend conferences, webinars, look for mentors and coaches that can help you along your journey and get your work to pay for it. Again, it's their investment in you and your team. It'll trickle down to your team members. Build a support system, including other managers. I think it's great when you can vent to other people that are in your role that have similar challenges as you. And you can also go to them if you have a question, a scenario that you haven't experienced before, but maybe they have. Digest and apply the feedback you receive from team members. So for example, let's say someone tells you or emails you or anonymous surveys you, which I've done before. Oh, I can't really follow you in meetings. I feel like you're a little bit all over the place. Yeah. Not so great manager would be like, you'll figure it out, get used to it. A great manager might say, oh, let me share my notes with you before or after, or hey, let's sit for 15 minutes afterwards to talk, and maybe you can just clarify things. And then that will give you an opportunity to learn how you can improve your meeting process as well. Remember, the best reflection on you is to have great direct reports. Some people think it's a competition. They think, I don't want my direct report to do well because then I won't look good. It's not true. If your direct report does something well, you will get credit for it, regardless of whether you invested in them or not. So you might as well invest in them and make sure that they do a great job so that it can reflect really great on you. All right, takeaways from today. Set clear expectations, set each other up for success. Don't make assumptions. You know what they say, when you assume, you make it out of you and me, right? Tailor to each individual on your team. Learn their social and communication styles. Mentor and sponsor your team. So important. And grow and water yourself. All right, I have a couple of resources I just wanted to share with you guys. I'm a big fan of Allison Green. She has a blog called Ask a Manager, and a book that she published about managing in the nonprofit sector. And the blog, I've learned so much from both of those things. So I recommend. The blog is a really easy read if you don't really want to sit down with the book. And like I mentioned before, other managers, great resource to have. All right, and like Miguel said before, I am the founder and principal of StellaFirma Strategies. We offer coaching, strategic planning, and change management services. And if there's anything that I touched on today that you'd like to talk more about, shoot me an email. I would love to chat. Maybe we can work together. Check out our website. You can ask questions now, or you can email me later. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Christina. This was such a wonderful breakdown of all of the ways that managers can show up for their employees, for themselves. Please drop questions in the chat. We do have about 8 minutes to go over questions, but something that came up for me as I was listening to you speak, and then when we did the exercise of describing a good manager, I saw a lot of people putting things in the chat that to me are more intrinsic qualities like kindness, compassion, being a good listener. And so I just wanted to hear from you if you have any recommendations for ways that folks can grow some of those skills that might not be intrinsic for everybody, but could benefit themselves and their teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thought that comes to my head is you might be surprised that some of these things might not be intrinsic for some managers, right? Some managers might have learned this over time. I really encourage everybody to keep in mind what your favorite manager was like and learning to apply those characteristics to yourself. Also, there's a lot of resources out there to help you to become a good manager and really advocate for yourself. I think there's a huge gap in animal welfare, and I know others will agree with me that for training and supporting managers. And ask your supervisor. Maybe you can go to a leadership conference. Maybe you can sign up for a leadership webinar. There's a lot that are provided, or there are a lot of options out there. So definitely look for external references. And hey, if you can set up a coffee chat with your favorite manager and ask them questions on specific scenarios, I think that will be helpful too.
Yeah, I see Allison mentioned self-awareness, which, we started this call shouting out Allison and I would say, yes, you have all the self-awareness, Allison. I very much appreciate that. Um, I also wanted to ask another question. I know please still drop your questions in the chat. I'm just also very curious myself. So you talked a lot about the different ways that managers can be equitable. And where my mind goes is like there is this hierarchy that exists within organizations, regardless of whether we want to be equitable or not. So I'm just curious about your perspective or your opinion as a manager on how we continue to, like, we know that there's a hierarchy order, like we have the CEO, executive team and all of that, but so being able to operate within that system without actually, I'll just say it, without being oppressive, because hierarchies can be oppressive by nature. So what are your thoughts on that? You might have a different opinion. So just curious to hear from all the experience that you have.
Heavy question. Let's see. I completely agree with you. It's built into our systems, the ease. It's how easy it is to step on other people, especially those under us or in roles that we see as being below us. The answer that I have is kind of woo-woo, I don't know, but I think being kind is really important. Being kind to others. And what I mentioned before, it's not a competition. You guys, you're in your spot for however reason however way you got there, you're there. And to make the best out of it, think about supporting and uplifting each other. That can only support and uplift you. And I think mentally that's true as well. But being kind to other people, even people that are not, yes, Jean, even people who are not on your team, so that when your team members see you and be like, oh, like, wow, look at the way Christina talks to this person. So a lot of people sometimes ignore like custodians or people who, again, are not in a role that you think is at your level. That's BS, right? Like they're doing so much to maintain the facility the way that you want it to be maintained. So I used to make it a point to make relationships with everybody that you come across in your workplace, regardless of their role, and building relationships with those people. Again, you don't have to be best friends with all of them, but asking them about their kids, asking about some hobbies, something to just check in with them. That way, again, you're modeling them, showing that kindness to your direct reports. But I am just a beginner when it comes to learning about the systems and how to fight it. So I encourage you to look for other resources as well.
Thank you, Christina. And I suppose some of this might tie into that, and I'll just paraphrase Emily Wood's question, where she's mentioning that a lot of people are reacting to having bad managers, and so how we might show up as managers might be perpetuating some of those behaviors. Any brief answer to, like, how do we combat being the recipient of bad management without replicating that same thing?
Oh, that's so hard. Maybe really try to the first thing that comes to mind is really try to internalize how that manager makes you feel when they are being a bad manager. So when they are ignoring you or not there for you, well, how does that make you feel as an employee? And keep that in mind as you treat and learn to treat your future employees. That feelings that you don't want them to feel that as well. But this is very, very deep. And again, I would really advocate for yourself. You probably can't advocate for your manager, but for yourself to attend conferences or watch webinars on how to, or read up on how to become a good manager and have your work pay for it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Sometimes the answer is like, it's not rocket science, right? Like, just be kind to each other, take care of one another, don't be selfish and greedy. So, yes, collectivism. So, that's something, I know this is your presentation, Christina, but let's look up the word collectivism in our own time versus individualism. And I think that that might be a good start. So, Miguel, off to you.
Thank you. And thank you, Christina, for pointing out the breaking cycles within the bad manager cycle. Let's break the bad manager cycle. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Christina, for your wonderful and insightful and informative presentation. And remember that the conversation can continue on Maddie's forum. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.